I am with Bremer Bank, and I'm your co-host for the Good Leadership Breakfast Series. I'm excited to announce my co-host this morning. He is the founder and CEO of Good Leadership Enterprises. Please welcome Paul Batts.
Thank you. Great start. If you decide you're going to lead with goodness, no matter what kind of comes to you, goodness has to flow through you. It's a pretty fascinating concept, isn't it? Especially when it starts snowing sideways on the 9th of April. We have a human being now who is feeling young and excited and energetic about his industry, about his craft, about leadership, and about being here at the Good Leadership Breakfast. So please join me in welcoming Monte Nuckols.
It's a pleasure to be here. Over the next 18 minutes, I want to give you insight, as Paul mentioned, to my 7F's journey over a 2.5-year period where I went through 2 major career changes and a personal crisis that I went through. And then I hope to also leave you with some tools and ideas around the soft side of leadership, what I've learned and practicing with the help of Good Leadership. So anyway, I'd like to go back to where Paul was just talking, starting in December 2013. We were starting this large project. In fact, the scope and scale of the project was larger than many small companies. And so my boss at the time pulled us together and introduced us to Paul and Good Leadership. And we were at this retreat. A very nice location, good place. And so everybody was being positive and happy to be there. And so as we got started, the first thing Paul did was he led us through a visioning workshop, where in a visioning workshop we looked 7 years back and 7 years forward. The 7 years back was not a big issue. That was easy. The 7 years forward was a bit of a challenge because I had to think to myself, okay, I'm 56 years old, plus 7, 63. I always had this goal of retiring early. I just had never talked about it before with anybody, and I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about it within my peers and my new boss and that sort of thing. So I was a little bit nervous about it. And fortunately, Paul started with the person sitting next to me and went around the table, so I had some time to think about it. And when it got back to me, I just kind of looked down and said, nothing. I really plan to do nothing after this. And so it was the first time in my life I ever had to face the end of my career. And I was feeling a little awkward about it. And so we went from there into the first time I've ever done the 7F. So we went into the 7F part of the workshop. And I could see doing it for the first time after I just had a little bit of epiphany about where I was in my life. I could set my goals. I could go around each F and set goals to help me navigate through change. So that's what I did. And then as we ended the retreat, as a leadership team, we all talked about our 7Fs with each other, and then we committed with each other when we got back to the office. We'd continue to talk about them, and we did. We helped help each other through the discussions of 7Fs to help us through the stress of the big project. We talked about them in terms of staying connected with our families during the project, and we also used them and talked with our teams to help them also drive balance within their lives and their career. So everything was going fine. We were up and running on the project, and we were into 2014. And in July of 2014, I just returned home from a worldwide trip, kicking off the project and meetings and workshops and so on. And it was July 2nd. I woke up with this horrible pain in my chest. And so I had suffered a STEMI, for those of you who are in the medical field, and 100% blocked artery for the rest of us. And I was very, very fortunate to be home because I live 5 minutes from the hospital, so I was able to get to the hospital about 4 o'clock in the morning. And on top of that, the cardiologist who opened the artery was already there. He was in the cath lab, and so they got me in there and got the artery open, and I was very, very lucky. I suffered no heart damage as a result of the heart attack. However, they found additional blockages And so 30 days later, I went through open heart surgery, and that's where the real fun started. So I got home. The first morning I was home, I shuffled into the kitchen to make coffee, and as I was going in, I noticed on the bookshelf the Good Leadership binder from the retreat the prior December. And so I got the binder out, and I looked at it. I was looking through it, and I got to the 7 F's, and I got to the goals that I had laid out for myself. And I was looking at them. I thought, well, these don't work anymore. In fact, it looks like it was just being pulled into a black hole, sort of like the one we saw in the news a couple days ago. There was a few little shiny edges around the outside of it, but the center of it was going right down the hole. So that day, I started setting new goals. And I went around the wheel, and my fun score certainly was down. I wasn't quite sure about my future. But I set goals and for myself and was working my way out. And since then, I can tell you that I kept the 7 F's visible with me, in front of me, and I've used them through every single change that I've gone through. And so I'd encourage you to take them home. Just don't leave them here on the table, but go home and continue to work with them. Share them with the key people in your lives, and continue to work with them. So then everything was good. I get back to the office in the fall after recovering, and everything was good, and the clock's running on the project. We finish a major phase that next summer, and everything is good. And then our CEO announced the spinoff of the automotive business. So I worked for Johnson Controls at the time. This automotive company was half the size of the company. It was $20 billion of our $40 billion business. So it made no sense to continue with the project, so I was asked to support shutting the project down. And as we shut the project down, they also asked me to be the IT leader for the separation project, the automotive separation project, which was quite exciting. I had never, I had done some merger and acquisition and some investor work, but never anything on the size and scale of this. And I think as I become to know after we started the project, this was the 10th largest spinoff that had ever been done in terms of the business world. So anyway, so to give you an idea, we had on an information technology organization, we had about 1,500 servers around the world that we had to test to migrate to the new company. We had 250 locations around the world that we had to split the networks for and fully test. The hardest part was over 300 corporate applications that we had to separate, and so the new company, Adient, could take applications with them as we left Johnson Controls. So, and then we had, when we started the project, I think within the first 3 months, we had to onboard over 800 people. The project was to take no more than 12 months, so that was our timeline. And the issue about doing the separation work is when the dates are communicated, dates and cost are communicated externally, the dates are non-negotiable. And so we started the project, and I had a new leadership team that had never worked together before, and doing a project we had never done before. So to ensure that we were getting off to a good start, I took a lesson from my mentor and boss from our first project, the big IT systems project. And I engaged with Paul in Good Leadership and went through the same process with the workshops and so on. So I want to share with you a couple tools that we used that really made the difference in bringing the team together. The first tool is called momentum analysis. So if you're not familiar with momentum analysis, it is a tool that, through a series of questions, will give you output on how well you're aligned as a team. So it'll tell you whether you're aligned with a compelling plan, are you aligned with shared commitments, and a number of other metrics that you can see. So we had the first time we did the momentum analysis, the scores were red and yellow, the scorecard, and so we could fill in the project as we had started. We were like this big container ship going through the ocean, a little bit rudderless. So we were moving around a little bit, not everybody on the same page. It was, we were spending millions of dollars a week. So every decision we made, had to be made in a timely manner, so it was no longer business as usual, and so it took us a little while to get ourselves aligned. So then about 6 weeks later, we did another momentum analysis, and that time we were yellow and green. We did have some greens on our scorecard. So we recommitted ourselves to the compelling plan we had put together. We recommitted to our shared commitments, and then we went back to work, and then a few weeks later I did it again, and this time we were all green. And I can tell you, once we got to that point, we were executing very well. We also used another tool called the Hogan Study, or the Hogan Analysis. And on the Hogan Analysis is you go through a number of questions, quite a few more questions, and the output of the Hogan Analysis gives you an indication on how people relate to each other interpersonally across many, many dimensions. And so I was able to use the output of that to direct the assignments of the team, including myself, and as we went through the project. And I want to talk about a couple use cases of that. So as we got into the height of the project, we had, there are a number of times that we could use the output where I changed my own way I was managing the team. There are things that I could see and things that I couldn't see, and I'll give you an example of one that I couldn't see. So we were doing another workshop, I think about once a month. I brought the team together, and we just went sort of off-site, away from the big project, and just evaluated ourselves and how well we were running the program. And so we were in this workshop, and we were talking, and I could feel there was some tension in the room, and we were talking, and then finally we just sort of broke the ice a little bit. And one of the team told me that they were not happy with the way I was managing, or that I needed to change my approach to management. So what was going on was, given the size of the project, we were asked pretty much daily to provide status reports, to provide KPIs on the program, to ensure that we were on time, we were going to make it. There was a lot of concern around IT. So as traditionally, for those of you who work and with your IT organizations who are in IT, we don't always have the best track record of completing projects on time and on budget. So there was a lot of concern. So we were daily bombarded by requests to give status. And so what was happening, that was impacting the leadership team's ability to execute the program. So they did nothing less than what I would consider an intervention on me, saying, hey, Monte, come on, we really need to stop all this, and you need to manage upward and let us run the project. So I don't think without the work we had done with our 7F wheels and our momentum analysis and the Hogan Study and Hogan Analysis, that we would have had the culture and the forum to have those kind of open discussions. So we came out of the project, we ran flawlessly, and we completed the project on time, and we gave, in fact, we were tens of millions of dollars under budget. So the companies separated in November 2016 with zero operational issues from an IT perspective. And then, being in automotive right now, when I spun, I went with the automotive company. I can tell you that the pace of change is tremendous. It's like nothing I've ever seen before in the work that I do and the travels that I have been on. And the automotive industry itself is going through a major change, and it's at a major inflection point. We had, with autonomous vehicles, electrification, and a lot of the OEMs right now are in process of changing, their strategies around the traditional cars and trucks that we drive to the newer cars. From an IT perspective, information technology perspective, we have things, like the Internet of Things. Everything's connected, smart devices, digitalization, sensors on everything, and artificial intelligence. So right now, we're all trying to figure out how to really embrace these technologies, and many of these technologies will drive the changes in our business models, and and the risks are very high and the demand to deliver is ever increasing. So again, that's part of how I use my 7F's journey, is to really manage that kind of stress and change in my day-to-day life. So we have a couple things I wanted to talk about in sort of summary. I wanted to go through some additional tools that we use and talk about some more approaches to the soft side of leadership. So one is, I've talked about momentum analysis. I've talked about the Hogan analysis that we use. The other thing that we do a lot is that we practice, and you've heard these. This is nothing. A lot of these aren't new. Is I take a 1-minute timeout at the end of a meeting and restate what's been agreed upon. So we'll do that, or I'll do that when there's a meeting around a bunch of complex topics, and you're not sure that everybody is aligned. And so we'll just take a 1-minute timeout and agree on what we agreed with, and then communicate that after the meeting. The other thing that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is if I go back to the very first retreat that we did with Good Leadership, and how we've practiced in large projects, that I think the best time to do personal development for a team is in a project. And so I've been doing this with each of the projects that I've been running, and I found it to be a really impactful time to do that. So traditionally, I would think, running a project, you got to get into the project, execute the project, and then get out and complete it. And who has time to do any kind of personal development with a project team? So we did that back with the big project that Paul mentioned we started with, or I probably wouldn't be standing up here as a result of that. And I've continued to do it. And as part of that personal development and these projects, the other thing I can tell you is that celebrate your successes, and you hear that a lot. But the way that I approach that is not only just celebrate the success, but make it meaningful. Because when you do something meaningful, that creates memories. And so I like, with the projects I'm responsible for, to have people have positive memories as a result of running through these projects. So celebrate them and make them meaningful. They don't have to be overly expensive, and you can be creative about that. So I think in closing, make sure I didn't miss anything. And anyway, in closing, what I'd like to say is that my 7F wheel rolls just fine. I've been very blessed. I'm in the best physical and health shape that I've ever been in my whole adult life. I'm very blessed to be able to say that. Work at it every day, very hard. So my wheel rolls just fine, except yesterday when we were landing here in Minneapolis in the 50-mile-an-hour winds, my fun score dropped a little bit. But anyway, it's back up today. So anyway, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully you can get your wheels nice and round and they roll for you. Thank you.
So, Monte, I admire people that can make IT and information technology in general look and sound exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so would you tell us, please, what we should be excited about in terms of how IT is really shaping automotive? I mean,
Okay.
Automotive is one thing we all have in common. Who didn't come here in a car? Right? So tell us, help us see what's happening.
Okay, great. 2 examples. So I was just in a meeting earlier this week talking about this. So one of we manufacture seats for every OEM or car manufacturer in the worldwide. So one of the things we talk about a lot is autonomous vehicles, and the movement to autonomous vehicles. So that requires a lot of technology. In fact, the city of San Francisco, so this is in the public domain, will be implementing autonomous taxis in 2020. And so if you think about the autonomous vehicle, and so you'll be calling your cab from your phone, the taxi shows up. So you want to make sure that when the taxi shows up, the company that owns which is the City of San Francisco, taxi shows up that's clean, right? I mean, just simple. You don't want the seat, trashed or food spilled on the seat. So when I said sensors on everything, literally there has to be sensors on everything. So you don't want the seat wet. You don't want somebody who would, rip the seats up or whatever. So that's one. The other thing with autonomous vehicles and the connected cars talking to other cars. So another OEM who's really into safety has a vision, that nobody will die in their car. And so that's happening, and where the cars will be talking to each other. And I think the last thing that's kind of exciting is that for those of you who are starting families or have young kids right now, there is a very high probability that your child will never learn to drive on the roads. So by 2030, we'll be fully autonomous unless they want to drive an ATV in the backwoods of Minnesota or something like that. But it's happening now. It's happening fast. Both Ford and General Motors are shutting plants down and retooling plants to make autonomous vehicles, and it's pretty exciting.
So the seat's going to be the brain for the car, huh?
Well, the seat's part of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually like to drive, so bite your tongue, Monte.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that's exciting, and traveling the globe on a regular basis is exciting. I've done that with you and with your organization. What's the most difficult part of being an IT executive at Adient?
Well, the automotive industry itself is very cyclical, and so we're either in a big growth mode, everybody's buying cars, and it's not necessarily tied to any kind of economic downturn, and then it declines. So it's just always like this. So we're either building up and building teams, or we're doing the unfortunate thing where we're downsizing. And so one of the big challenges is around when we're in a down period and you're having to have tough conversations with people. But I can tell you that and embracing some of the goodness concepts and being transparent and being positive and telling the truth to people that that goes a lot better.
Well, you kind of piqued our imaginations when you talked about celebrating things.
Yeah.
So you've done one of your direct reports called me one time and said, I want to learn how to do Monte-style celebrations. So can you give us a couple examples of some Monte-style celebrations?
Yeah, so I talked about being creative and making memories, and so a couple that really stand out that I think went really, really well. So one, since our headquarters is located and for Johnson Controls before the separation in Milwaukee, we had a leadership meeting in Chicago. And so one of the things we did was we had dinner on top of one of the buildings in Chicago. And so that was very memorable. It was a beautiful, warm night, and the lights were, and the city lights and the buildings and everything was really memorable. The other thing was fascinating. On the project that I'm doing now, our pilot, first plant that we went live with was in Krakow, Poland. Poland is famous for their salt mines, if you're familiar with Poland. So anyway, we took the team. There's probably about between 30 and 40 of us. We took the team and we went down into a salt mine and had dinner 300 feet underground. And it was beautiful. We had music playing. The acoustics was just unbelievable, and had a wonderful dinner, very memorable.
I think everybody wants to be on your team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about your 7F's wheel and realizing it wasn't working for you, and then you started to set new 7F's goals. Can you give us some examples of what some of those goals were?
Yep. So the ones that stick out, and after I went through the personal crisis I went through, health crisis I went through, is as I was looking at the future, then what I did was blend. So, if you read the book, it talks about blending. So I was looking at, goals for the family. I was looking at goals for the future. I was looking at goals to have fun. And so one of the things I did, let me talk about family, because that's one of the most important things to me, was making sure that I had reconnected with some of the family members that I had lost some connection with as a result of living, far away from everybody. So So I just set a goal to go out and start doing that. Fitness obviously was a really big one, so I set goals to change my diet. I set goals for my exercise, and I've maintained that. And then just talk about fitness, as I get up the scale and I get to a 9 or a 10, then I recalibrate. And I say, okay, here's my next set of goals. So I'm never done. I'm trying to get to where I'm set goals to get me to a 10, but when I get close, I recalibrate and then take the next step, so my wheel's always getting bigger and better.
And if I remember right, the lowest on your wheel is usually fun.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, so I think it's largely my personality is I'm a little bit serious and always business oriented and execution oriented, and a lot of times I don't take that time out for myself to laugh and have fun.
What'd you do to increase your fun score?
Well, the fun score, I did a couple things. I started playing more golf, and so that's fun. And then I also blended with friends and went out and reacquainted myself with some friends.
The last question we ask traditionally here is, it's designed to help us encourage other people through proof statements that goodness pays. Can you remember a specific moment looking back on your career when you just know for sure goodness pays? Yeah,
so I'd have to point back to some of the harder times. So when we were in the recession in 2009, if you can remember back, the automotive industry was in a major crisis. I mean, General Motors had filed bankruptcy, and President Obama had bailed out General Motors, and so it was really, really bad. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that we were very, very close to losing the entire automotive industry. I mean, we have, at any given time in automotive, there's $50 billion flowing through the supply chain at any given minute. And so we were in a major crisis. Companies were filing bankruptcy, and so the president of our automotive business at the time, we were going through tens of thousands of people were losing their job to keep the company from filing bankruptcy. And he was extremely transparent. If you look at the definition of goodness pays, I mean, in terms of even in that kind of environment, there was a lot of encouragement. And so he was giving encouragement to people, explaining the process we're going through and why we were doing it. And I remember right after we went through all of that and we were coming out of later that year, 2009, we did our employee survey, and we had talked about as an executive team not doing it because we didn't want to see what the scores were going to be. But as a result of practicing the goodness concepts, our employee engagement scores were the highest they'd ever been, and our leadership scores were the highest they'd ever been, even in that kind of tough time.
We're grateful for those kind of examples, and we're also really happy that you persevered through the very difficult plane ride from Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So thank you. Let's say our appreciation for Monte Nuckols.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.